I have a little bit of an embarrassing confession to make. Several years ago, before I realized how truly idiotic his politics were and how many bad takes he has in general, I was what you would call a Sam Harris fan. I would listen to his podcasts on the way to work, and I even purchased and read his book, The Moral Landscape. That being said, I'm not here to talk about Sam Harris specifically, nor do I particularly care to bash the intellect or knowledge of anyone I mention in this video, but I do reserve the right to do so. The reason I shared my embarrassing anecdote about once being a fan of Sam Harris is because I wanted to highlight the outsized role and importance that public intellectuals play in the lives of the average person who follows their work. I am going to be a little harsh right now, so apologies if this applies to you, but it also applies to me as well. If you are the type of person that follows the work of a so-called public intellectual, you are probably not an academic. Following the work of public intellectuals is essentially the nerd version of being a weekend warrior. Listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson explain the wonders of the universe, or watching Hank Green explain what polymelia is, can definitely bestow a sense of learning and even importance on the listener. After all, even the mere fact that you are interested in engaging with that type of content likely says something about the type of person you are, right? While the average person is binge watching Law & Order, here you are voluntarily consuming educational content. And you are right to a certain extent. You are a certified nerd. And as a certified nerd myself, I am definitely not speaking down on that. In fact, I encourage it. But we should be careful. There are certain downsides and pitfalls to following the work of public intellectuals. Before diving too deeply into what I mean though, let me define terms. A public intellectual can be defined as a well-known, intelligent, learned person whose written works and other social and cultural contributions are recognized not only by academic audiences and readers, but also by many members of society in general. Public intellectuals usually take the form of highly trained academics who pivot to public communication and discourse as their main form of earning income. Although sometimes they may continue doing research in their respective fields, it is usually not their primary focus once they have gained fame or notoriety. My main issue with the rise of public intellectuals, and why I think we should be careful about who we listen to, is the tendency for cults of personality to develop around them. Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris are probably the best examples of this that I can think of, though I have personally always found Jordan Peterson to be particularly distasteful, racist, and classist. It is undeniable that he has found a loyal and rabid fan base that hangs on to his every word. This does not necessarily have to happen as a result of a concerted effort on the part of said intellectual. As humans, it is easy to pedestalize someone whom we have grown accustomed listening to and learning from, particularly if we learned things from that individual that was especially beneficial. This becomes problematic when we find ourselves developing a parasocial relationship with this person, especially when it grows to the point that it feels personal. I've personally had online exchanges with fans of Sam Harris that I can only describe as being completely deranged after daring to pontificate that I feel like many of Harris's views that he publicly expresses are just an excuse to justify his racist beliefs. I am not saying it is completely beyond the pale to defend a public intellectual or any celebrity for that matter, but if it seems to genuinely enrage you that someone holds a negative view about someone you look up to, you may want to examine that a bit within yourself. Even in milder forms, we should always be questioning our attachments to these individuals. Public intellectuals typically tour doing speaking engagements and debates, being paid handsomely in the process. And if you have gone to such an event or plan to in the future, I'm not trying to spoil your fun or say you shouldn't, but I would at least encourage you to ask yourself, what do you plan on getting out of it? If you see it as purely entertainment, much in the same way going to a play or any other live event is, then that's great, whatever floats your boat. But if you see it as something educational, I would implore you to question that instinct just a little bit. Maybe it truly is educational, and if so, that's great, but maybe it isn't, and I would argue it likely isn't. What are you going to learn from listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson speak that you couldn't learn without paying him $200? Another particularly pernicious aspect of the rise of the public intellectual is that they never stay on topic. And no, I don't mean they go on long-winded tangents. I'm referring to the tendency of public intellectuals to speak on subjects outside of their area of education and expertise. This is not inherently a negative thing per se, but as a society, we tend to treat academics as generic smart people, rather than the niche experts that they are. This is why someone like Sam Harris, who has a PhD in cognitive neuroscience, can rise to prominence critiquing the religion of Islam and then be primarily known as a political commentator. Treating these public intellectuals as generic experts is somewhat related to the cult of personality concern that I raised a little bit earlier. Though I am not personally against public intellectuals speaking on subjects that they may not necessarily be experts in, I do think it is incumbent upon them to remind their audience when they are giving a take on something that is outside of their field. Fans of academics and public intellectuals are exactly that, fans. And being a fan of someone affects the brain in weird ways, and I think anyone in this position should constantly remain cognizant of that fact. Fans of Hank Green seem to almost literally think that he knows everything, and while Hank, who has a bachelor's in biochemistry and a master's in environmental studies, is definitely intelligent and well educated, he certainly does not know everything. What concerns me more than his fans asking him about subjects outside of his scope of knowledge is that he doesn't seem to mind answering these questions. He will look into things and give it his best attempt. It's always fairly obvious when he had to look into something specifically to answer a viewer's question rather than when he's speaking on something he knows well already. It would be fairly trivial for him to give a brief rundown on a subject he looked into and then give a disclaimer that he's not the best person to ask about that particular topic. But it usually isn't the route he takes. Arguably just as dangerous as hanging on to the words of a given public intellectual, whether or not they are speaking on a subject matter that they are educated in, is the very strange phenomenon of learned helplessness that happens around a community of public intellectuals. I hate to pick on Hank Green's fans again, but they are incredibly guilty of this. Too many times I will scroll into the comment section of a Hank Green video to find questions directed at Hank that they could probably figure out themselves with a few cursory web searches. And of course, his platform is too gigantic to entertain each of these trivial queries, but he occasionally will. I know it may seem rude and it may hurt some people's feelings when it happens, but I absolutely love when a creator will respond to a well-meaning question with, "Google it," because as knowledgeable as some of these so-called public intellectuals may be, no other human should be a substitute for your own brain. Whilst memorizing a bunch of physics facts after watching a Sean Carroll video may make you feel smarter and will even help you sound smarter when you find the right time to regurgitate those facts to an unsuspecting audience, intelligence is not about how many random facts you know. True intelligence, if such a thing exists, is more about our ability to think critically and apply existing skills and knowledge to novel situations as needed. It is incredibly easy to fall into the trap of waiting for what your favorite public intellectual thinks about a particular subject or issue before forming your own opinion, even if they are objectively more qualified than you are. Just as an example, I have a specific opinion about the likelihood of the existence of aliens. And while I respect Neil deGrasse Tyson's knowledge and expertise in his field, I also know that the existence of aliens is an unknown for mankind at this time. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson cannot change my opinion on that topic just by virtue of being who he is. He can change my mind with a reasoned, well-articulated argument. And that is a skill that we must learn to hone and develop independently. This isn't to say that we shouldn't value the work of intellects, particularly if they have earned a reputation for being reliable. It does mean, however, that as convenient as it can be sometimes, we probably shouldn't be turning our brains off. You have to be fully engaged to learn. You guys may not know this because I've never mentioned it on this channel before, but I actually am a software engineer. And I built an app, a desktop app for Windows users, coming to Linux and Apple soon. However, on Windows it is available for download. It is a productivity app. It contains a text file, the ability to add sticky notes. It has a built-in clock on it, a stopwatch, as well as an alarm. So it has multiple features. You can buy it right now at candorsuite.com. I specifically built it because some of you may not want to donate to Patreon because you feel like you may not be getting enough value back in return. So if you specifically want to help this channel out, help the channel grow, and help support me, but you feel like you need something tangible in return, go to candorsuite.com, download my app, Candor Focus. I do plan on building more desktop apps in the future. Thank you for watching. Overton TV is kept alive by viewers and patrons like you. Please go over to patreon.com/OvertonTV to pledge your support today for as little as $3 a month or more if you so desire. Failing that, you can always like, comment, share, and subscribe. Again, thank you so much for watching.